Okay, so welcome to our panel discussion on the impact of global energy transition on mining dynamics in Africa and lessons learned towards strengthened traceability of minerals and gold to reduce conflicts and protect biodiversity. This is an Africa session and it's going to be in English, so please make sure that you grab your headsets for translation. So the reason why we are here, it's because we recognize Africa's critical role in energy transition. The continent holds about 50% of global reserves of cobalt, manganese, and other significant share of aluminium and copper. The DRC alone supplies more than half of the world's cobalt, a crucial component for battery storage and electric vehicle. However, this increase in demand bring significant challenges, particularly regarding the impact of forest, biodiversity, and ecosystem, especially in the Congo Basin. Ghana is also exploring leveraging its lithium deposits, but the process is fraught with many challenges. And same for the gold sector, a sector that is very dominant in the Ghanaian economy. So this panel is going to explore the delicate balance between mineral extraction and the environmental sustainability in these highly biodiverse nations. So we are talking about Ghana and DRC here. We will discuss not only the challenges, but also the opportunities that arise from these dynamics. Our focus will be on enhancing traceability and accountability in the global markets to combat illegal extraction and promote sustainable governance. We are hoping that the insights from this session will contribute to Colombia's initiative to strengthen international cooperation on mineral traceability, aiming to reduce conflicts and protect biodiversity. So thank you for coming. And I will now turn to introduce our panel. But just before I do that, we are going to spend 30 minutes for each of my panelists to respond to specific questions. After which, I'll turn to the audience to ask any follow-up questions that you may have, and then we will wrap up. So without much ado, I'm going to introduce to my left, Benjamin Boache. So Benjamin Boache, we call him Ben, is the Executive Director of the Africa Center for Energy Policy, ACEP. ACEP is a think tank, a regional think tank in Ghana, advocating for transparent, inclusive, and sustainable energy policy across Africa. With expertise in energy sector governance, extractive industry, and economic development, Ben has played a vital role in advancing policy reforms that benefit Africa's economy and citizens. Under his leadership, ACEP is an influential voice in shaping Africa's energy future, addressing critical issues like transparency, accountability in the just energy transition. Next to my extreme right, is Jean-Pierre. Jean-Pierre is from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Jean-Pierre is a lawyer, an anti-corruption lawyer.
Also coming into the picture and becoming important for countries that are, endowed with these critical minerals. The question then arises, how do we protect the environment beyond even what we are doing with gold to make sure that the lithium mines, the cobalt mines, the nickel mines are not going to face the same picture? And that creates an extra burden for us to control and contain the environmental devastation that we are actually seeing. So we see an opportunity to actually produce these minerals to finance development and economic activity. But the danger that we may escalate the extraction to what we can contain responsibly is quite glaring. And Nafi talked about, Africa hosting a lot of the critical minerals, but it's also the reality that we are the most unexplored. So there's a lot of exploration activity that is going to happen, and a lot of spaces are not going to be opened up for critical mineral extraction once we discover these minerals. And most of our countries are beginning to discover lithium, which in the past was not a mineral that we're interested in. We're interested in the gold and the diamonds. And now we're interested in critical minerals. And we're exploring for them. What will be the implication of this on the ecosystem and environment is really what the burden is. And for civil society, actors, for governments, and those working on these spaces, we need to engage more to ensure that we don't sacrifice the environment for what we need to also move away from fossil fuel consumption.
Thanks very much for those insights. So I'm now going to turn to Jean-Pierre, um, bringing in the experience from DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo. So Jean-Pierre, in many of African countries, the capacity of the state and the influence of armed groups significantly shape the governance of mining sector. These dynamics can have profound implications for environmental sustainability and the regulation of mining activities. Understanding how state capacity and armed group involvement intersect in mining regions is crucial for addressing environmental impact and fosters effective governance in the sector. So my question to you, all of these dynamics play out in the DRC region. So my question to you is really, how do the capacity of the states and the dynamic of armed groups in mining regions affect environmental impacts and governance in the mining sector? So share some perspective from the DRC, an important country when it comes to transition minerals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nafi. Good afternoon to everyone. As Ben, I'm very happy to be here in Cali, Nasiri, and Green City. I'm come from DRC. I'm a Francophone speaker, so I want to apologize for any English vocabulary and the grammar mistakes. So thank you very much, Nafi, on your question. I think that we all agree that one of the proper way to protect the environment as well as to enable a good governance of mining sector is to put in place strong policies, strong legal framework, regulation in place. I think that is the point of a start if you want to make sure that you protect the environment. In the case of the DRC, I would say that we have laws, regulation, as well as all this framework, legal framework exists. So that is a good point. But the challenge, huge challenge that we are facing in the DRC is when it comes to the enforcement of this law. Because we all agree that the legal framework itself cannot protect the environment unless government has capacity to move from the legal framework into the implementation. So that is really the key challenge in the DRC, my country, and I think that in almost of Africa, African countries. So what I think in 2018, one of example that I'm just to give, in 2018 we passed the new a new mining code law in Congo. So the experience was like, we are going to improve the Congolese legal framework to make sure that the environment will be protected. We are going to domesticate some of international standards, especially IATA standards, to make sure that into the mining code and to make sure that this will help in order to improve the governance of the mining sector. So we did it successfully. But what happened now, 6 years after the adoption of the mining code law, I can tell you that in terms of the enforcement of law, there's nothing. So the very important point is to keep in mind that when putting in place strong policies, a strong legal framework to protect the environment as well as to improve governance, we should keep in mind that the enforcement itself is really real challenges. So as we invest a lot to reform, at the same time, let us keep in mind that we need to invest more and more to make sure that all these instruments are implemented. So that is really the first point. And as we said, Nafi, that the DRC basically is divided in two parts. You have the east of the DRC that we have mining concessions where government as well as the army group operating in the country. So in terms of how army groups affect the environment, let me just tell you that we are at what we call a non-state zone, non-state area, where there is no any enforcement of law, neither standards that can make sure that that army group respect the environment. It's important to highlight that army groups in Congo, they do the illegal extraction of minerals. So when you do illegal extraction of minerals, the question is that do you think that the environment of the governance will be a huge concern for army group? No, that's not the case. So we have been seeing that in this part of the DRC, the army group continue to operate, but they don't care about any governance, environment standards, neither the implementation of the law. So that is a huge challenge. So what is the opportunity? The question of opportunity, is there an opportunity to make sure that both government capacity, that government has capacity to enforce the law, I would say government and army groups. So the opportunity, I think, is the increased demand of critical minerals. From still one of the opportunities. Opportunities because we have been seeing in the DRC that a lot of global initiatives that are coming to actually enable a reliable and sustainable supply chain. So we have all these OCDO standards and as well as private sector initiatives. But the challenge also is that the experience that we have from DRC is like these initiatives, these global initiatives come in the country without really understanding the local dynamics of power in Congo. So they don't integrate the weaknesses of public administration in the manner to ensure that government will monitor and government will be able to enforce the law. So basically, this is some perspective from DRC in terms of opportunity. I think that there is a huge opportunity, but it's very important to make sure that we invest, make sure that the government will help to actually enforce the law. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Jean-Pierre. It's quite interesting what you said about the DRC situation, that it's kind of, the law has broken down and the armed groups have taken over and doing what they like. Moise, the intersection between mining activities and forest ecosystem pose significant risk to biodiversity. As mining expands, it often encroached on vital forest habitats, threatening wildlife and ecosystem health. We know this again from DRC, not just DRC, but in many other places in Africa. So understanding the intersection is essential for developing effective strategies to mitigate negative impacts and ensure the preservation of biodiversity in these critical regions. So my question really to you, Moise, is that how does the intersection between mining and the forest ecosystem impact biodiversity in these countries? I mean, I know you from DRC, so you use the DRC experience. And what measures need to be implemented to mitigate these effects? So can you share some thoughts with us?
Thank you, Navi. I think before I say anything, I would like DRC to speak for itself through images. I need some help with this to get to the next image. Can we have the next picture? Okay. This is what mining looks like in most places in DRC. You can have your own estimate of the land area that this can cover. But we can agree that whatever the numbers are, it is a huge surface. You will see that the ecosystem has become a minority among a big majority of mining activity for some reason. This is also what it looks like in terms of pollution of water resources. This is a collection of samples just to analyze the quality of water. And finally, this is the real consequence on a child who has nothing to do with the millions that are extracted from his homeland. I would, before going into details, just say that mining activity has real disruptive influence on the ecosystem. That is a known fact. But in DRC, what we have seen is that sometimes we like the attention of discerning the two types of disruptions that are occurring due to mining activities. There are tangible disruptions. Those are things that we can see. And there are intangible disruptions. Those are slow onset consequences of mining activities. And unfortunately, yes, the mining code that my colleague Jean-Pierre just spoke about require those mining organizations to have environmental and social impact analysis, which are very good. But those analyses are subjected to the dynamic of client and agent, simply because the person who is founding that analysis is the person who wants to dig minerals. So, well, they are not going to pay you if you're telling them that their activity is going to cause harm to people. So that is the first challenge that we have and the first dynamic that needs to be addressed. The second one is a technical challenge. Some of the slow onset impact of mining activities cannot be predicted. There is no framework. There is no non-scientific process to predict the full impact of mining activities on the ecosystem. So it becomes very complex to assess in reliable, quantifiable, and verifiable ways what the real impact is, but we can rely on the physical impact that we can see to predict what could be the general impact. So to come back to your question, Nafi, the general impact are several fold. The physical disruption that distorts the ecosystem, and with the distortion of the ecosystem, people lose their livelihoods, people lose their water, and people lose their health. And when I talk about people, I see also the general ecosystem surrounding the people. Those are the birds, the insects, and other animals who also play an important role because they are pollinators and they contribute to the cycle of the environment. So the consequence is that when that happens, all those elements migrate. Birds move away because of the noise and the air pollution because of the chemicals that are used. People move away because sometimes they lose their land because it has been sold to somebody who has more money. And finally, you have insects also who are moving away. When that happens, you lose not only the trees that were there, but you lose the potential of pollination and replication of the environmental cycle that was there because all the contributing elements and entities have moved away. But what is worse, Nafi, is that when people move, you know that they have left behind a soil that they cannot use anymore because it has become impoverished and improper for agriculture. They have left behind water. They have left behind their shelter. So they will go and try to create life in another place. So when a mining activity occurs, it doesn't only destroy where it is occurring, but it has a knock-on effect. When people will move, they will try and find new shelter. And guess what? They cut more trees to have space to build their homes. They will have needs to grow their food. And guess what? Slash and burn agriculture with all these consequences. So the consequence is not only what we are seeing now, it's double. It's now ahead in the future, let alone the intangible consequences, as we have seen that child who, for all obvious reasons, have been affected by the mining activity. I will pause there, Nafi. Thank you.
Are there any measures that you can share with us in terms of mitigation?
Sure. Lot of measures, I think. The first one is, I think, maybe not a measure, it's something that I will ask the audience to clap for themselves, because we have realized that life is actually biological in essence, but it is also supported by the mineral. So we have also realized the interdependency that needs our world today. We cannot stay, I would say, not interested or non-committal to the degradation that is happening in the environment anywhere in the world. We need to become aware of that, and we need to be advocate of it. But the good opportunity is also the fact that today we have woken up everywhere in the world to demand for sustainable sourcing of minerals. Today, we all want to be sure that whatever we are wearing, whatever we are holding, comes from sustainable source. We need to maintain that tempo. And in terms of regulations, we need governments to have a very strong regulation in terms of who conducts the environmental and social impact assessments. And we need them to have proper policies in terms of having some buffer zones between protected zones and mineral areas. Let me pause there, Nafi. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Moise. Thank you. Okay, so that's quite, it feels like you're telling the story of Ghana when it comes to illegal mining. Thank you. So I would turn to Ben. It's very connected to what Moise just shared. So as we've seen an upsurge of illegal mining in Ghana and many other countries. We had the experience from DRC, but also Sierra Leone and Senegal and other places where mining is happening. It raises significant global concerns. And so based on your experience across Africa, particularly in Ghana, perhaps you can use the experience from Ghana. How does the increasing demand for transition mineral, affect illegal activities? And what strategies has been discussed or implemented to address these challenges that need to, what else do we need to do differently? Because I know that many of these countries, as both Moise and Jean-Pierre mentioned, they have the mining code. Implementation is a problem. What do we need to do differently to address some of these concerns?
Thank you very much. Yeah, so I think, as Jean-Pierre and Moise indicated, I mean, we have the laws in most cases, but implementation is also a challenge, where we just ignore the law and rely on the power play within our context. Politicians who are supposed to, monitor compliance and ensure that the environment is sustainable, in most cases are the one behind the mining that is happening and the illegalities that we see in our context. So they come to the meetings at the international level, at the regional level, to sign pacts, to go home and just continue to destroy the environment. And we need to call them out and make sure that they are compliant to the global protocols that they sign up to ensure that we can hold them responsible for non-compliance and without implementation of those protocols and laws that they sign up to, without which we'll continue to see the devastation in our communities and in our countries, particularly with more critical minerals or more minerals going to be demanded and more economic activities in that space going to be opened up. We need regulation. We need politicians to stay away from the business to actually ensure that they manage and regulate the space. Otherwise, we actually looking at a ticking time bomb where it is going to be very difficult to control some of these mining activities. We also have to take spatial planning seriously and define where mining can take place and where mining cannot happen. We cannot allow extraction of resources everywhere they can be found. Once we agree that we have to plan and demarcate areas in countries to allow mining to take place in specific areas, regardless of what mineral is found beyond those areas, they cannot be mining in those areas. And that clarity is required so that countries don't wake up one day, decide that we are allowing mining in the forest zones, and the politicians zoom in to mine before they even get the licenses to do that. We need to enforce our rules and hold people accountable for the destruction and the mess that we are seeing across the region. We also need to build capacity of people who are getting into mining spaces. They've only heard that cobalt is needed, and when there are traces of that element, then they just zoom in, start mining, destroying the environment without the science and capacity to do it appropriately. We need to make sure there is a guide that helps some of these artisanal mining that happens in countries so that they are not just destroying, but they can sustainably mine these resources in our country. So regulation has to be very tight, and ultimately responsibility has to sit with governments to make sure that they allow regulators to regulate the environment, they allow the laws to actually work in our countries, and call people to order when they are not actually being compliant in a context. Otherwise, everybody want to make money, and all of us die in the end. And I mean, we talked about some of the consequences that are coming. I mean, we have seen research in some of our communities where even not the human ecosystem is being impacted by the water that we are drinking, the pollution in our river bodies, where we are seeing babies born without limbs, some without eyes, in the mining communities because of cyanide and chemicals that are being washed into river bodies that communities are also drinking from them. We cannot look on without taking action to protect these ecosystems.
Thanks very much, and Ben, I have a final question to jump here, and then maybe Ben and Moise can add on to. It's really looking at examining the complexity of mineral extraction. It's essential to highlight the importance of traceability in the supply chain. And so my question really is, what lessons can be learned from global initiatives aimed at strengthening the traceability and or due diligence of minerals, and goal to reduce conflict and safeguard biodiversity? Are there any initiative to share on implementation and progress in the Africa region with colleagues here in Latin America? Perhaps something around the Lusaka Declaration or any other initiative that you can think about.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nafi, on the question. I think that before meeting your question, let me just maybe say a couple of words about the context. I think the DRC has experience on traceability initiatives. I think I remember that the Europe took a regulation, we call it a conflict regulations. I remember also that the US had taken another regulation, was President Obama, we call it, the regulation was called the Dodd-Frank Law Act, Dodd-Frank Act. And when you look at these global initiatives, the objectives were to actually enable a reliable and sustainable supply chain of mineral, and especially from the east of Congo. The second objective was actually to reduce illegal activities, illegal mining activities in the east of Congo, to make sure that mining activities will continue to generate revenues for army groups, for rebel groups that I'm talking about the maybe 100 of rebel groups in Congo, in South Congo. So the lesson is the key lesson from these initiatives is very clear, is that they failed to achieve the objectives. So that is really one of the key lessons. But it's important to understand why the global initiatives failed to achieve the goals. I think the first lesson is about, I'm talking about, I think it's very important to take a broad and holistic approach when it comes to design or to design standards or to design any global initiatives. It's very important to take as I said, an holistic approach. Why? Because we saw that these initiatives take only one. This initiative's perspective was focusing only on normative perspectives, which basically say we are going to put standards. Once we have the standards, we are going to create impact in the ground without integrating social and economic perspectives. Because what is the root cause of the illegal activities in the Congo, for example? This is poverty. This is the poverty is really the root cause of illegal activities. So we think that is important. And this conversation of poverty brings on table another topics, which is basically talking about the sharing of mineral wealth. You see, this is important conversation to make sure that, because because it's important that we discuss about how producing countries share wealth with the global market. That is important, because the exportation of mineral from the Congo is only they are exporting only raw materials from Congo. So the country remains very poor, and it is unrealistic to expect that any global initiative can stop, you see, illegal activities in Congo. So that is one of the lessons to show that maybe. Yeah. But just to add that one, a very quick one. To add another lesson that is I think that is important to shift it from the top-down approach and use the bottom approach. Yeah. This is important when it comes to set up global initiatives, to set up standards. Yeah. So maybe I can stop.
Thank you very much. Is there anything that you'd like to add?
Yeah. I mean, briefly, in the global ecosystem, there's been attempts to help regulate sourcing. For example, if you want to sell your gold in the London bullion market, if you can't trace it to the source, you can't sell it there. Then now we have the emergence of the UAE, India, that are importing a lot of gold from Africa that is not traceable. All right. So the global ecosystem needs to work together to ensure that we are all committed to tracing minerals to the source. We export over 1 million ounces of gold from the small scale sector that cannot go to market that ensure that gold can be traceable. But UAE and India are now the hub for these commodities that can be traced to the source of production. So we need to bring in all these markets that are buying the minerals to make sure we can trace the gold to the source, and that prevents those who are mining illegally, those who are not compliant with ESG, to all come into regulation.
Thanks very much. Moi, sorry, I would have to go to the audience now because we only have 5 minutes to wrap up. So I'm really sorry about that. And thank you very much, my panelists. I'm now going to turn to you. I would be able to take, I'm afraid, only one question because we have less than 5 minutes to finish. So if there's any burning question from the audience that you would like to ask, or maybe two. Oh, okay. All right. So quickly and briefly, there are 2 hands at the back there.
Yeah, well, maybe we share the question quickly. Let's see if they're similar. But I think you were mentioning the governance and like, you know, on the one hand, the government and how the government can actually apply the rules that they make. But what role do you see for the local civil society? You know, how do we actually take these local approaches and engage them in this monitoring and in participation in what we need to do to distinguish the legitimate communities that are doing mining, and that we hope that they can do it in a good way, from those actors that we definitely, you know, want to eliminate from these scenarios.
Thanks very much. I'll take one more and then we can respond. Is there any question? Or you have? Okay.
Sorry, I don't know if someone else, but just very quickly on the word governance, could you maybe dwell on what is the role of financial crimes such as corruption and money laundering when it comes to gold in, on the one hand, preventing regulations from being applied both at the national and international level, but also in terms of when we talk about conflict financing, for example, in cobalt, financial crimes have been rampant, although most of the international attention seems to be on other issues, child labor, for example. So once again, both as you know, an impact, an adverse impact itself, and as an enabler of other crimes.
Thanks very much. So I'll send, so perhaps you want to talk about the.
Yes, so on the civil society side, there's a lot of work that is happening across the region. In Ghana right now, there is a Red Friday where everybody wears red against illegal mining. It's escalating. There are movements that are coming up to help stop mining in the forest. You know, politicians doing the mining, unregulated mining. So we're doing that at the local level. We need more momentum, but we also need international support. Because, like I indicated, it's the politicians who are doing the mining, so there's no agency on their part to act, and that makes it very difficult for them to do that.
Thanks very much. You want to answer the question? Yeah, Moise. Okay, go ahead, please.
Thank you. On financial crimes, I think it's clear that minerals bring in and out a lot of money. And if we don't trace the flow of those money, there will be consequences on the global security. So it is important that we work on that. In DRC, there are efforts to identify effective beneficiaries, like true owners of mineral activities, simply because people hide themselves behind a lot of screen companies or names from other organizations. So it is important to strengthen that. But it links on what Jean-Pierre was stressing about, and Ben stressed about it, on global cooperation between buyers on one hand, but also sub-regional cooperation, because there is a lot of cross-border criminality and contraband of minerals. So if there is no strengthening of sub-regional cooperation, it's explained why some of the global standards cannot be achieved, or they are not producing the desired impact. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for your participation, and thanks to my panelists for the expert analysis. I'm afraid I'm being signaled to end this conversation, and I really do apologize that we didn't have the chance to ask many more questions from the panel. But I do hope that some insights have been shared from the Africa continent with Latin America that can help shape you know, the plan that the Colombian government is trying to put in place. Thank you all very much, and enjoy the rest of your evening.